Welcome, I'm Sergeant Justin Putz, and this is Soldier's Journal. Thank you for joining us as we cover stories that are about you, the soldier. In this edition, we go to Germany to see the last of the M1 tanks leave Europe. We travel to Fort Benning, where members of past and present from the 173rd Airborne celebrate their 50th anniversary. But first, we go to the White House, where Chaplain Emil Kapaun posthumously received the Medal of Honor by President Obama.
This is an amazing story. Father Kapaun has been called a shepherd in combat boots. His fellow soldiers who felt his grace and his mercy called him a saint, a blessing from God. Today we bestow another title on him, recipient of our nation's highest military decoration, the Medal of Honor.
Chaplain Kapaun's extraordinary heroism and selflessness above and beyond the call of duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, the 3rd Battalion, 8th Cavalry Regiment, the 1st Cavalry Division, and the United States Army.
Well, I can't imagine a better example for all of us, whether in uniform or not in uniform, a better example to follow. Father Kapaun's life, I think, is a testimony to the human spirit, the power of faith, and reminds us of the good that we can do each and every day, regardless of the most difficult of circumstances. We can always be an instrument of His will.
The following day, Chaplain Kapaun was inducted into the Hall of Heroes at the Pentagon. The ceremony was attended by family members and veterans of the Korean War who served with the chaplain, along with a number of soldiers and dignitaries. Secretary of the Army John McHugh and Army Chief of Staff General Ray Odierno spoke at the event.
Father Kapaun's name and exploits will be from this day forward forever enshrined in this Pentagon's Hall of Heroes.
Chaplain Kapaun is the 7th military chaplain to be awarded the Medal of Honor.
Father Kapaun's story is in itself wholly unique. Father Kapaun's only weapons were his steely defiance, the words he spoke, and a simple piece of purple ribbon that he wore around his neck, a mark of his chaplaincy.
He was a man of deep conviction and great piety, with an intrinsic love for his fellow man, the Army, and his country.
Besides the Medal of Honor, Chaplain Kapaun was awarded the Legion of Merit and Bronze Star with V device for valor. And in addition to serving in Korea, Kapaun served 2 years in the Army during World War II in the China-Burma-India campaign. At Forward Operating Base Thunder in Afghanistan, springtime typically brings thunderstorms and firefights. But recently, during a clear day, there was thunder, and it was coming from the live fire range as U.S. soldiers were there training their Afghan counterparts. Sergeant Jacqueline Fitzgerald tells us more.
Soldiers of the 203rd Thunder Corps, Afghan National Army, uncap a new beginning in mortar training for Patika Province. These ANA soldiers are the first troops to complete a 60mm mortar course to become certified corps trainers. The course instructor was trained in Kabul, and the only coalition influence during the training was advising on technical details.
Mortars is a vital role, period. I mean, especially with all these mountains, you're not going to get too much direct attack. So, I mean, it helps to have some indirect to be able to get over mountains and stuff like that. And it's 60, it's light. So, I mean, they can take it out on patrol and set it up quicker than any other system.
A 60mm mortar system that is ANA trainable and easy to move translates directly to self-sustainment and an independent security for post-2014 Afghanistan.
First, I received the training from the coalition, and right now I'm teaching the new soldiers. I am the technical trainer. I am teaching and training my soldiers. This is a good thing. I learned something, and now I pass that knowledge on to other soldiers.
The live fire on April 13th was the culminating event to end the course. The 203rd soldiers will now get ready to travel throughout their area of operations to train other soldiers in the Thunder Corps on this weapon system.
My message to all the ANA personnel is they must do their best and support their country, nation, and their soil to stand this poor country on its own feet and become stable like other countries. We would like our country to raise the same level as the other countries and even better. God willing, our country will advance, and ANA personnel must do their best for this country and to stand on its own. This is my only wish for peace to come to Afghanistan.
With a little patience, the soldiers use techniques they learned in class to zero in on the target. This first class is a big step forward for the ANA to take the lead on training as well as operations.
The training of Afghan soldiers and the use of combat arms is just one part in the preparation of the upcoming drawdown. The handoff of the mission will be daunting, and U.S. and coalition forces are working hard to make sure the Afghan security forces know they are ready to take over. Gail McCabe has more in this report.
The drive to make Afghan security forces self-reliant is evident. In southern Zabul, the latest set of artillery soldiers from the ANA's 205 Corps are here for certification. Their weapon, the D-30, is a howitzer from the Eastern Bloc. Here in Afghanistan, it's a powerful symbol of the growing reach of the ANA.
It's absolutely deadly lethal. Today you'll see this thing fire 9,700 meters, which for these guys to shoot almost 6 miles is it's a phenomenal capability to reach out and touch the enemy.
An enemy Afghan security forces are being asked to engage on their own. The drawdown of U.S. and coalition forces is underway, with an end date soon within sight. Security in Afghanistan is shifting to the hands of Afghans.
There are currently 66,000 U.S. military in Afghanistan, a number that's shortly going to be cut almost in half. That means there's a lot of eyes on Afghan security forces and what they can and are willing to do.
It's about confidence. Can they really do it? And we know they can do it. We've seen them do it. They do it every single day. It's a matter of them coming to that realization that, yes, I can in fact do this.
Throughout the country, in places like Tarankot, Afghan self-assurance is steadily reinforced by coalition mentors. In the east, at combat outposts, where the enemy is active, U.S. advisors oversee training on the proper operation of machine guns.
Next, we'll move on to the 240 Bravo, M240, which is another machine gun, crew serve weapon. It's a great weapon.
On the outskirts of Kabul, U.S. Special Forces and Afghan commandos sharpen their vision on where and how the fight for security and stability will be won.
They certainly have the heart. More importantly, they have the capability to safeguard and secure Afghanistan now and into the future.
It's a future where Afghans will launch rounds of success, fired with confidence. Gail McCabe, Afghanistan.
After the break, we go to Afghanistan to see how we're training the Afghan police life-saving skills. And we go to the 50th anniversary of the 173rd Airborne. It's all up next on the Soldier's Journal.
As a soldier in the Army, eating healthy and staying in shape are important for my job and my goals. In training for the Olympic trials, wrestling practices are intense. We're constantly training and beating each other up, with the goals of getting stronger and more explosive. If I don't feel properly right after a workout, I'm just beating myself up. I need to know what I'm taking so I can stay healthy and eligible to compete. Some dietary supplements claim to be university tested to give me explosive pumps and power. I don't need proprietary blends for power. Chocolate milk and smart training give me my edge. Supplements are no substitute for eating healthy foods and exercising regularly. Join me, Specialist Berletto, and all of the armed forces in Operation Supplement Safety to learn about dietary supplements. Know the right way to get fit and don't get ripped off.
Incoming transmission.
2, 1.
Are you getting ready to PCS soon? Check out move.mil. You can find out the steps to take before you move, see how to handle do-it-yourself moves, and how to file a claim if necessary. Move.mil makes moving a little bit easier for you and everyone else involved. That's move.mil, your official DPS portal. Roger that.
Policemen in Zabul province, Afghanistan, have had their share of improvised explosive devices. Responsible for manning 30 checkpoints and patrolling a major highway, the policemen understand that their actions in the minutes after a blast will determine the life or death of their casualties.
This is obviously more comfortable for the patient, for the casualty.
The Kalat Reserve Kandak has had its share of experience encountering improvised explosive devices inside Zabul province.
You give the command to lower.
In a Kandak with very few medics, each policeman has the responsibility of a combat lifesaver.
Oftentimes you get more casualties than medic can handle. So what we do is we try to train as many soldiers as possible to do some of the basic life-saving skills, whether it's wrapping a wound or relieving pressure from a collapsed lung and so forth, and while we can take care of the more complicated wounds.
The Kandak's American advisors hold a 3-day combat lifesaver class for 17 policemen. Those policemen will then train the rest of their Kandak in tactical first aid.
The most important thing that I want the AUP Reserve Kandak students to pick up from the CLS class is to be able to take a combat casualty, be able to stop the bleeding, and treat any other wounds that they find, and take them to a higher level of care.
Because of time restraints and language barriers, the medics put extra emphasis on the skills vital for the policeman's success.
The most important thing is blood loss. We try to emphasize how to put on a tourniquet and how to do it quickly.
After the class, the policemen received certificates validating them as the subject matter experts on tactical first aid.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Number 1 minute.
Reporting from Kalat, Afghanistan, I'm Army Specialist Tim Morgan.
In Germany, the average soldier's tour of duty is 2 to 3 years. Only once in a lifetime will you see a part of the Army exit Germany after decades of service. Army Sergeant Benjamin Bogus takes us to Bremerhaven, Germany, where the last of the U.S. combat heavy battle tanks are being packed and ready to ship.
The last U.S. combat heavy battle tanks are leaving Germany. 22 M1 Abrams tanks are loaded and securely fastened onto rail cars at the Theater Logistics Support Center, Europe's railhead in Kaiserslautern, Germany. The M1 is a third-generation battle tank that entered service in 1980. It's known for traits like heavy armor, mobility, and a design for modern armored ground warfare.
Being part of this last movement brings back a lot of memories. Being I was here in '83, I lived most of the Cold War, and when I see pictures of this, it reminds me of like empty towers, the wall of East and West Berlin, things that have already changed over the years. This is just the last capital to an era that I was lucky enough to have lived through.
The tanks are transported to the port of Bremerhaven, where they are loaded and made ready to set sail back to the United States.
I feel proud that they selected us to do this. It's kind of cool because our company is the 529th Honor Guard, and the name of the ship is Honor. So I feel pretty privileged to be guarding these tanks.
After loading the final battle tank, named Casa Loca, the gate is closed and the ship leaves port, taking with it the end of a chapter in international military history. Reporting from Bremerhaven, Germany, I'm Army Sergeant Benjamin Bogus, 21st Theater Systema Command.
Soldiers wounded in combat may require numerous surgeries and face years of therapy to heal. Sergeant Brian Spradlin introduces us to one Joint Base Lewis McChord wounded warrior who's finding a little help by saddling up.
When Sergeant Michael Buseri was wounded in Afghanistan, he was left with a fist-sized hole in his back, a destroyed rib, and a long road to recovery ahead of him. 2 years later, he's found a little help along that road, or more specifically, a ride. This is Davis, his companion in a unique form of physical therapy that's proven to be a bright point in Buseri's healing process.
When I come here, it's the best time I have all week. Like, I can come here completely mad, hurting, whatever, and it just calms you. And it's like having a best friend that you just get to play with for a couple hours.
Davis is part of the Back in the Saddle Warriors program that provides hippotherapy, a horse-based form of occupational therapy, to JBLM's Warrior Transition Battalion. By working with a therapist and the natural movements of the horse, wounded warriors like Buceri can regain lost flexibility and motor skills and better manage their pain.
It is a very clinical program that is helping warriors with traumatic brain injury, spinal injuries, any kind of physical injuries. We've actually been told it's like being on 5 different physical therapy machines, but it's nice and warm and fuzzy.
Nice and soft. Control that landing.
At the end of the day, after a session with Davis is over, all Buceri really wants is a little more time in the saddle.
Once I'm done stretching, I feel great. Like I'm a little sore because I know I worked everything, but it's a good sore, and like I feel like I can just go and do this for hours, and if I could just stay here and ride all day, I definitely would. I really love this guy. Come on, buddy.
For the 5th Mobile Public Affairs Detachment,
come on.
I'm Army Sergeant Brian Spradlin.
Sergeant Bucchieri's time with Back in the Saddle Warriors is almost complete, but he plans to keep working with Davis and his fellow veterans as a volunteer for the program. From Vietnam to Operation Iraqi Freedom, the 173rd Airborne Brigade has served with dedication and honor. Melissa Bell takes us to the celebration and ceremonies for these Sky Soldiers as they commemorate their 50th anniversary and honor those who couldn't be there.
Soldiers of the 173rd Airborne Brigade were airborne once again as they celebrated their 50th brigade anniversary.
I think if you had to summarize it, the best way to do that is to say today's about spirit, a special spirit of these soldiers in the 173rd.
These paratroopers took flight once more off of Fort Benning's 34-foot jump tower.
45 years ago, I was here in June of 1968. It's class 42.
And relived their younger days as Sky Soldiers soaring through the air.
There was always that thrill that they waited for. When they went out of 34-foot tower, even though there was no parachute attached to them, you couldn't say they weren't airborne again.
As the 173rd veterans relived the glory days, they also told old war stories. Stories that their buddies remembered as well, like Sergeant Dutch Holland, a rifleman that served in the unit during the Vietnam War.
Well, the operation began on the 5th of November. We would not have been left if the company commander had known the size of the enemy there. He did not know we were facing a regiment at that time.
One of the battles the 173rd Airborne Brigade is known for was Hill 65, Operation Hump.
Several say it wasn't an ambush, it was a chance meeting with the enemy. They weren't waiting.
A battle that tested the very core of the men involved.
A few shots were fired, and the enemy immediately surrounded us on 3 sides. There's no place we could go, so all we could do was stay and fight. When we got back to the squad, most were dead, and I thought Jerry had lost his mind. He was going back into the field of fire. Jerry was the only one that was really using reason at the time. He was going back to the field radio. Of those 22 there, I, Jerry Langston, and a kid named Billy Martin were the only 3 to survive.
Over 35 years later, and as these veterans read the names of the fallen from all eras out loud.
November 8, 1965. David Uglin, Davis Uptain, Samuel S. Tolliver.
They not only heard the name of a battle buddy, but a brother they lost in arms.
Sergeant Matthew R. Hennigan.
My son, Michael E. Yashinsky.
For these Sky Soldiers, an anniversary is not only a time to celebrate, but a time to remember.
After the break, we'll go around the Army to El Salvador, where the U.S. and Salvadorian military share their medical know-how. And then we'll go to Fort Carson, Colorado to see soldiers competing in a combatives tournament.
The warrior ethos states, "I will never leave a fallen comrade." We have soldiers and family members in our formation that feel suicide is their best option. Every one of these individuals has a friend, battle buddy, or leader in a position to help. I need you all to get involved. There is no room for bystanders. We can't afford to lose members of our Army family to suicide. If you think suicide is a solution to your problems, ask to see someone immediately. There is no shame in asking for help. If you think someone is contemplating suicide, intervene. Every soldier is important to our Army. The strength of our nation is our Army. The strength of our Army is our soldiers. The strength of our soldiers is our families. And that is what makes us Army strong.
As we go around the Army, we travel to Kentucky, Colorado, and Maryland. But first, we go to El Salvador. Sonsonate, El Salvador. U.S. and Salvadorian military medical professionals share suturing techniques in preparation for the medical clinics they are conducting right now. These clinics will be free and are intended to service impoverished residents of some small communities in El Salvador. The soldiers are training at Military District 6 in Sonsonate. It is the temporary home base for Joint Task Force Jaguar as they support Beyond the Horizon El Salvador, a U.S. Southern Command-sponsored, Army South-led, joint foreign military interaction and humanitarian exercise, which takes place until June. Fort Knox, Kentucky. This year, the Army sent out 6 mobile training teams to installations worldwide to certify soldiers as Master Fitness Trainers, or MFTs. MFTs serve as additional duty special advisors to unit commanders, company through division, to facilitate physical training based on FM 7-22. Students competing to be MFTs must meet Army height and weight standards and pass the PT test with a total of 240 points or higher, with a minimum of 80 points in each event. By the end of 2014, the active component Army is expected to have about 4,500 MFTs. Fort Carson, Colorado. Soldiers from the 329th Field Artillery are competing in the unit's first combatives tournament. The competing soldiers train for 4 months with Level 2 combatives instructors before competing. The winners of the tournament qualify to represent the unit in the division level tournament taking place this month. Reisterstown, Maryland. The Maryland Army National Guard completed its 2013 Best Warrior competition held at Camp Frederd Military Reservation. 6 soldiers competed in the 3-day event to represent their respective brigades. Sergeant Delvon Anderson was named the NCO of the Year, and Specialist Robert Anderson was named the Soldier of the Year. Although the two share the same last name, they're not related. Our congratulations to both soldiers, and that's a look at what's going on around the Army. After the break, we go to Kabul, Afghanistan, where soldiers try to lift their way to 1,000 pounds.
For official release, the Transition Assistance Program app has been redesigned to comprehend the The redesigned Transition Assistance Program is now known as Transition GPS. They help all service members prepare for civilian careers. Transition services start prior to separation to help you become employment ready. Find a job, go back to school, or start your own business. Visit turbotap.org to learn more. And that's the bottom line.
Soldiers and civilians compete in a strength competition at New Kabul compound. Airman First Class Kellen Carr shows us how these strong men and women lift heavy and keep from getting injured in the process.
1,000 pounds. That's the bar set for service members and civilians at New Kabul compound looking to bench press, squat, and deadlift their way into NKC's 1,000-pound club.
Everyone that competed in the competition seemed to be more of a seasoned lifter. They knew what they needed to do. 1,000 pounds is not an easy feat for a lot of people, so for your young lifters just getting into it, they might just be naturally strong and say, oh, I could do this. I didn't see a whole lot of that.
Staff Sergeant Joe Skiro says while the competition is great for morale, it's important that service members avoid injury.
I've been doing it for 10 years. I kind of know my limits. I know what my body can handle. You get a young soldier or young airman, anybody young that's never really trained before and they get here lifting heavy weight, their potential for hurting or injuring themselves is really high. They say no pain, no gain, but sometimes pains limit your gains.
Limiting your gains is the last thing you want to do in this competition, and medical physicians say even the most common injury can be avoided with a good warm-up.
Things like deadlift and squatting is low back strains, trying to do too much weight too fast without properly warming up, stretching, and actually working up the endurance up to that event. Just like if you were going to run for a marathon, we don't try to make you run 26 miles the first day. There needs to be a build-up. You need to have a good spotter. Make sure that someone is helping you with your form.
Captain Siegschlag says the heavy weights and risk of possible injury shouldn't keep you from competing as long as you do it right.
Well, I absolutely encourage people to continue to do this. We want people to be active. That, strengthening your muscles, you just need to be careful that your joints and your ligaments cannot keep up with that if you go too quickly.
The competition ended with 10 new members of the 1,000-pound club, and most importantly, injury-free. Airman First Class Kellen Carr, Kabul, Afghanistan.
Look for us throughout the week with the latest in news about the Army on Soldiers Update. Also check us out on radio with Soldiers Radio News on the American Forces Radio Network. That does it for this edition of the Soldiers Journal. Join us again next time for the stories that are all about you, the soldiers.